Imagine Florence, the year 1348. The streets are dead, echoing only with moans. The plague, the Black Death mows down people by the thousands. Every house is filled with sorrow, every family with funerals. The air hangs heavy with the smell of smoke from pyres where bodies are burned, and an unyielding fear. A heavy bell tolls over the city, its sound a harbinger of the end. Doctors are helpless, priests pray, and death simply continues to gather its harvest, leaving no shadow of a doubt. This is the end. People then believed it was God's punishment, that death was absolute, inevitable, final, and essentially the entire history of humanity is a story of submission to it. But what if, into this darkness, a person had come and said, "Death is just an illusion, and you are already immortal"? Sounds like madness, right? And while we unravel this incredible puzzle, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the like button if you enjoy what you're hearing. And by the way, from what city and time zone are you watching our lectures? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to find out. We've grown accustomed to thinking of death as a kind of final line, like a door slamming shut once and for all, like the final act of a play, the end of a story. But listen to what I'm about to tell you. Today, we're going to talk about an idea that literally shatters this established worldview. And we're not talking about mysticism or resurrection from the dead, or even cryonics. No. We'll dive into the very heart of quantum mechanics, where reality behaves far stranger than any science fiction. Imagine living in a world where the very concept of the end for you, personally, simply doesn't exist. Where your death in one reality is just a branching point, and in another reality, you continue to live. Where every time something could go wrong, the universe simply splits in two, so that you always remain alive. Sounds like pure nonsense, right? I can already hear the skeptics grumbling, "What rubbish! This is unscientific fantasy." And I understand you. It's genuinely hard to accept. The brain resists, like a puppy on a leash being pulled into cold water, because our intuition is like an old, reliable, but sometimes very stubborn guard dog. And quantum mechanics is like a kitten that's climbed onto the chandelier and refuses to come down, looking at you with a completely serene expression. But wait, this is an idea that, strangely enough, has serious mathematical and physical backing. Yes, it's radical. Yes, it turns everything upside down. And it's called quantum immortality. You know what's craziest? If this theory is true, then you, the very person listening to me right now, are already immortal. Not figuratively, literally. In the infinite kaleidoscope of parallel worlds, you will always find yourself in the branch where you continue to exist. Where your every step, every decision, every moment is just one of many possible events happening simultaneously in different realities. Death is just a branching point. An end is just someone else's beginning. Yours is always a continuation. We're about to embark on a dizzying quest along the edge of reality itself. Along its flip side, we'll journey to where everyday logic fails, and the laws of physics open up horizons that even the boldest philosophers of the past could only dream of. So, buckle up. We're beginning. The year 1935. Outside a window in Dublin, a chilly rain might be falling, while inside, in a cozy study, sits a man named Erwin Schrödinger. He isn't trying to derive a new formula for love or develop the perfect Irish stew recipe. He's racking his brain over a far stranger problem: how quantum mechanics, this queen of oddities, interacts with our everyday world. And you know what he came up with? The perfect way to take any logic to its absurd extreme. I can tell you're already deeply immersed in this wild story. If you're enjoying how we break down the wildest scientific hypotheses, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. It helps us understand that we're heading in the right direction. And please tell us, what city and time zone are you watching our lectures from? We're very curious to know how widely our listeners are spread across the world map. Now, back to our cat. Imagine a sealed steel box. Inside, a living cat. An unfortunate animal, of course, but it's just a thought experiment. Next to the cat, an ingenious mechanism, a tiny piece of radioactive substance, so minuscule that over the course of an hour, it has a 50% chance of decaying. Or not decaying. 50-50. Like a coin tossed in the air that hasn't landed yet. It's both heads and tails at the same time, until you see it, right? That's superposition. The quantum world operates by its own rules. The thing is, if this atom decays, a Geiger counter will activate, and that will trigger a hammer. And the hammer, my dear listener, will smash an ampule of hydrocyanic acid. And hydrocyanic acid, well, you get the idea. The cat will die. So this atom is our quantum puppeteer. Until we open the box and look at the atom, it's in two states at once, decayed and not decayed. And if the atom is in two states, then this entire infernal contraption, including the unfortunate cat, must also be in two states. The cat is both alive and dead. Simultaneously. Physicists were like, "What nonsense? Are you asking us to believe that poor Barsic, or whatever that cat's name is simultaneously purring inside the box and already stiff with rigor mortis?" Well, yes, that's exactly what Schrödinger was saying. Not in those words, but through his brilliant, if chilling, thought experiment. He wanted to show superposition, which works perfectly for subatomic particles, becomes absurd when we try to apply it to cats, hammers, and bottles of poison. It's like trying to hammer nails with a microscope. It's a tool, but not for that task. Or perhaps this thought experiment opened a portal to something far deeper, to something that makes us wonder. What if it's not just a physicist's joke, but a hint at a more grandiose reality? A reality where death is merely one of many possible states, and far from the only one. Where the legs of quantum immortality truly begin to sprout. Imagine autumn of 1927, Brussels, the 5th Solvay Conference. The air is thick with cigar smoke, debates, brilliant ideas, and the premonition of a scientific revolution. The brightest minds in physics were gathered there: Einstein, Bohr, Heisenberg, Schrödinger, titans of science debating the very nature of reality. "God does not play dice," Einstein boomed, challenging the new quantum mechanics that whispered of randomness and uncertainty. They didn't yet know that in those heated debates, an idea was being born that decades later would literally split the universe into an infinite multitude of realities. And it would split it, right under our noses. But before we get utterly lost in the labyrinths of infinite realities, a small, friendly gesture. If you enjoy how we unpack the wildest scientific ideas, support us. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps us grow and find even more amazing stories. And tell us, what city and time zone are you watching our lectures from? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear. So let's return to Schrödinger's cat, whom we left in the box. Remember, in the last installment, we talked about how, until the box is opened, it's both alive and dead simultaneously. Well, according to one of the boldest and most shocking interpretations of quantum mechanics, the so-called many worlds interpretation, or Everettian interpretation, named after its author, Hugh Everett III, who proposed it in 1957, in reality, nothing collapses. No wave function collapse, no game of alive or dead with a single outcome. Instead, something far more mind-boggling happens. The universe simply splits. Imagine that every time a quantum event occurs, and this could be anything from an atom decaying to a photon blinking, and even your decision. The universe doesn't choose one path out of many possibilities. No, it does something simpler and more complex at the same time. It creates all possible paths. There you are, standing at a traffic light. Go or wait. In our conventional reality, you choose one. But in the world of the quantum many-worlds interpretation, at the moment of your choice, the universe splits into two identical copies. In one of them, you, all decisive, hit the gas and go. And in the other, you, the same yet different, patiently wait for the green light. Two parallel realities, two yous, following different paths. And each of them is absolutely convinced that their reality is the one and only. Sounds like the plot of the wildest sci-fi movie? Physicists were in shock at first too. It's just a way to avoid the measurement problem, some grumbled. This is pure madness, others exclaimed. But the point is, this idea doesn't just elegantly explain the behavior of quantum particles without requiring any mysterious collapse. It makes you, and each of us, a participant in an infinite cosmic show. You're not just living one life, you're living all possible lives, right now. Imagine your consciousness is like a flashlight, shining on one of the countless pages of a vast book of possible event sequences. Every time something uncertain happens, a quantum event, your decision, a random turn of your head, the page turns. But not because the previous one vanished, rather because you've switched to a new book where all the preceding pages are identical, but from this one onward, everything has gone differently. And there are an infinite number of such books, such universes, such copies of you. For every moment, for every atomic vibration, for every breath you take. In one reality, you're currently listening intently to this story. In another, you've already changed the channel. In a third, you've gone to make tea. In a fourth, you never even turned on this video. And all these yous, they are absolutely real, absolutely convinced of their uniqueness. This isn't just a universe where alternative options exist. This is a universe that, itself, is an infinite decision tree, with billions of branches. And on every branch, you tune. October 14th, 1912, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Thousands of eyes are fixed on one man, former US President Theodore Roosevelt. He's preparing for a campaign speech. Tension hangs in the air. Suddenly, a shot rings out. A bullet flies from the crowd and strikes him directly in the chest. Chaos, screams, panic. But what does Roosevelt do? He doesn't fall to the ground, doesn't cry out in pain. He continues his speech. Imagine, with a perforated chest, with the bullet lodged in his thick folder of speech text and his glasses, he speaks for 75 minutes. A full 75 minutes until doctors finally took him away. A moment when death was so close, you could almost touch it. But it didn't happen. And as you ponder this almost unreal episode of survival, allow me to ask, if you enjoy how we unpack the wildest scientific ideas, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us create more stories like this. And of course, we're very curious to know, what city and time zone are you watching our lectures from? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to find out. Listen, that story with Roosevelt is the perfect springboard into the deepest depths of quantum madness. We've already talked about how, according to the many worlds interpretation, every choice, every random event, splits the universe into new realities. Literally, you toss a coin, and in one universe it's heads, and in another, tails. And this is where it gets most interesting, and perhaps most terrifying. What happens to you in these realities? If the universe branches every time something uncertain happens. For example, you're crossing the road, and a car is speeding towards you. In one branch, you safely pass. In the other, well, you get the picture. But here's the main question, the one that sends shivers down your spine. What happens to you, to your consciousness, to your sense of self? The theory of quantum immortality, based on the many worlds interpretation, posits you will always find yourself in the reality where you continue to live. Sounds like pure selfishness? I'm immortal, and everyone else? Well, good luck to them. Imagine you're playing a computer game, and this game has an infinite number of autosaves. But the save system works so cunningly that it only saves at moments where your character has survived. Every time you face danger and could die, the game creates a new branch where you miraculously escaped doom, and your consciousness simply jumps into this lucky version. All other branches where you lost, they exist, but you will never experience defeat. Your consciousness, your self, will always follow the path of survival. Wait, you might say, what about that other me who dies in the neighboring reality? Is he just out of luck? And that's a perfectly fair question. But from the perspective of your subjective experience, the reality where you died simply doesn't exist for you. Your consciousness doesn't experience that end. It's like a river that, splitting into two channels, always carries your boat down the one that leads to a safe harbor. Yes, the other channel might lead to a waterfall, but you simply won't end up there. Your death. It's not your death, because you cannot experience it. Your consciousness, if this theory is true, simply moves to the version of reality where you continue to breathe. Unbelievable. Insane. Physicists are still debating whether such a hypothesis can even be tested. But one thing is for sure. If this is true, our lives take on an entirely new, dizzying meaning. Or perhaps a meaning that just became even harder to grasp. On July 16, 1945, in the pre-dawn darkness of the Alamogordo Desert, New Mexico, people were playing Russian roulette. Only the stakes weren't just the life and death of one person, but of all humanity. The scientists who created the atomic bomb stood in bunkers, teeth clenched, and waited. The explosion was meant to be deafening, but what if their calculations were wrong? What if it didn't just detonate the charge, but ignited the entire Earth's atmosphere, turning the planet into a star? This thought, this minuscule but real probability, hung in the air like a sword of Damocles, until a dazzling flash, brighter than 1,000 suns, tore through the night. And the planet didn't ignite. Were we lucky, or was it inevitable? If you're already intrigued about where this journey to the edge of reality will lead us, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And please tell us, what city and time zone are you watching our lectures from? We're very interested to learn our geography. Now, back to that very inevitability. Imagine, you're sitting at a table, a revolver with one bullet in front of you. Hear that? The cylinder clicks, your finger rests on the trigger. Classic Russian roulette. We know the chances of survival are 1 in 6. But what if I told you that in quantum Russian roulette, you would never lose? Never. Absolutely. Sounds like pure madness, right? Have physicists completely lost their minds? I can almost hear the indignant exclamations. But this isn't just playing to the crowd. It's one of the most shocking conclusions that arises from the interpretation of quantum mechanics known as the many worlds interpretation. Listen carefully. In regular roulette, the outcome is only known after the shot, either a bullet or a click. But in the quantum world, it's more complex. If you were playing Russian roulette with a quantum pistol, then every time the bullet could have fired, the universe literally splits into two branches. In one branch, the one where the bullet missed, you continue to breathe, live your life, perhaps even telling friends about your incredible luck. And in the other branch, well, another you isn't so lucky. And here's the most interesting part. Your consciousness, yourself, will always end up in the branch where you are alive. Do you understand? You will never experience the moment of your death in quantum Russian roulette. Think of it like a fork in the road. You're driving a car. One road leads to a cliff, the other continues along a smooth highway. At every moment of choice, your universe splits, and you always end up on the road that didn't end in a cliff. Always. Your existence, in essence, jumps from branch to branch, always choosing the one where you are alive. Wait, a skeptic might say, but someone does die in that other branch. Isn't that death? Of course they do, but it's not you. Or at least, not the version of you that continues to experience the world and ask questions. For your consciousness, which is a continuous stream of experience, death simply won't happen. You'll live on as if playing a video game where you have an infinite number of lives, but you only experience the ones where you are alive. This isn't just some amusing thought. It's an extremely serious and unsettling conclusion that has sparked heated debates among physicists for decades. Convenient, right? You're like a member with a lifetime pass to the I'm Alive club, no matter how insane the risks you're willing to take. Except this pass comes with an infinite number of other yous who weren't so lucky. And that's an entirely different story. Imagine ancient Greece, a dusty, sun-baked slope. Every morning, for hundreds of years, Sisyphus, condemned by the gods, pushes his enormous boulder up the mountain. The sun beats down, sweat streams down his face, muscles ache from the unbearable weight. And just as the summit is almost reached, when freedom seems within grasp, the stone slips from his weakening hands and tumbles down with a roar, again and again. This isn't just a punishment. It's eternity transformed into the most excruciating, meaningless routine. Eternity as a curse. Before we continue our journey through these dizzying ideas, I want to remind you, if you enjoy what we're talking about, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It's the best reward for us. And also, from what city and time zone are you watching our lectures from? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to find out. Now, let's return to our story. Sisyphus was cursed not by death, but by immortality in its worst form, the endless repetition of meaningless labor. And here arises the question, what if our so-called quantum immortality isn't a gift, but the very same curse, only far more sophisticated? Okay, you might say, you survived. Great. What's so bad about that? But now imagine, the universe is constantly dividing into an infinite number of branches. In one of them, you won the lottery and are living it up. In another, a piano fell on you. But you, of course, survived. In that reality, where the piano, say, missed your head by a millimeter, leaving only a scratch, or in a reality where you survived but lost both your legs, or where you got off with a fright but lost all your savings. What if the best realities are already occupied by other yous, and you constantly find yourself in those branches where you barely dodged a catastrophe, where you survived but lost everything you had, or ended up in a hospital with a pile of broken bones? Or, yes, you're alive, but at what cost? It's like an endless traffic jam. You're moving, but very slowly. Every day, the same thing. Hour after hour, mile after mile. And you can't get out of the car, because you are always you in this car, in this lane, inching along toward the unknown. You don't die, but you also never arrive. Or like waiting endlessly in line at a huge bank. You won't die, but you'll never get your business done. Never. What if it's not an instant death, but a slow, agonizing survival in a world where each subsequent branch gets worse and worse? Where you age, get sick, suffer, but don't die. Where you're trapped in a body that long ago stopped serving you, but continues to breathe. But wait, a skeptic would object. What about my loved ones? My wife, children, Barsik the cat? Here's where it gets truly unsettling. Quantum immortality, as we understand it, works for your consciousness, for your subjective experience. The theory suggests that you will always exist in the reality where you survive. Does this mean you'll exist in branches where you survived, even if in those realities, none of the people you love are there? Imagine, you survived a terrible car crash, but your family didn't, in this reality. But according to the theory, you will continue to exist in countless branches where you survive, living through them, in complete solitude. You know, it's like playing a video game where you have an infinite number of lives, but all your companions die one by one, and you alone wander through an empty world, again and again, forever. That's no comfort. That's solitude elevated to the absolute. Thus, quantum immortality could transform into a kind of cosmic solitary confinement, where you are forever trapped with yourself in a series of increasingly undesirable realities. Is it a gift, or the worst curse imaginable? An eternity spent in a traffic jam on the side of infinite worlds, where you might have survived, but lost everything that made life valuable and meaningful. Imagine the 12th century, a scorching afternoon at the royal castle of Castelnaudary in southern France. King Louis IX, known for his righteousness and wisdom, stands before a mirror. He studies his face, weary from affairs of state, and suddenly his gaze falls upon a peasant cleaning shoes at the entrance to the throne room. An exact replica. The same eyes, the same nose, the same mole above his lip. The guards are in shock, the courtiers whisper. The king orders the double to be brought before him. Standing there is a man who looks exactly like himself. What to do? Which of them is the real king? And what if, at that very moment, in another reality invisible to us, the exact same encounter happened, but the roles were suddenly reversed? At what point do you stop being you? By the way, if you're enjoying this journey through the hidden corners of reality, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. We're always curious where our viewers are from. Let us know in the comments from what city and time zone you're watching our lectures. We'd love to find out. So, we've arrived at the trickiest question. If quantum immortality implies that you're constantly branching off into thousands of realities, experiencing thousands of different fates, then which of those yous is you. Listen, it's like opening a box of cereal, and inside there are a million identical packets of flakes. You pick one, it's your cereal, but the others exist too. Wait, a skeptic might say, so I'm not me? My identity is just an illusion that shatters into millions of pieces with every choice? What nonsense! And that's a perfectly fair question. Philosophers have been racking their brains over the concept of self for thousands of years. What makes us us? Memories, experiences, the unique fingerprint of our soul? Imagine your consciousness is a kind of spotlight. It shines on one single reality, the one you are currently experiencing. And all other realities, with all the other yous, they're like millions of other beams of light shining into parallel worlds. You don't see them, don't feel them, don't perceive them. Your self doesn't split. It merely multiplies. It's as if you make a copy of a file on a computer. The original file remains, and now there's another independent of it. And the one doing the copying continues to interact only with the original file, even if they know copies exist. Our brain is structured to create a continuous, coherent picture of the world and ourselves within it. It stitches all these moments into one smoothly flowing narrative. That's why you feel whole and undivided, even if quantum mechanics says you're an army of one. We simply don't feel these splits. Our spotlight is always aimed at one, our current reality. Think of a river flowing down a slope. It might split into several channels, but every drop of water in each channel is still part of the same river. It's just moving differently now. And each drop, if it could reason, would believe that it is that very river. You know, it's like a video game with branching storylines. You make a decision, and the game splits. In one branch, you went right. In another, left. But you, as the player, only experience one of those branches at a time. You are the one who decided to go right, while that other you who went left exists in a different virtual copy. So if your brain and consciousness are this player that always chooses one branch of reality for its current experience, then you always remain that very you. It's just that the number of potential yous is off the charts. It's not a question of losing identity, but rather of its infinite multiplication. And your realness? It's always in that single, unique moment you're experiencing right now. Quite convenient, wouldn't you say? Imagine, Los Angeles 2022, Hollywood neon lights flood the streets, and a movie hits the screens that would forever change our perception of the mundane multiverse. Everything, everywhere, all at once. Remember, one woman, 1,000 versions of her, splitting into an infinite number of realities, from an unsuccessful laundress to an opera diva or a kung fu master. Every branch of her life, every missed or taken decision, spawned a new version of herself, living in parallel. It wasn't just a movie. It was like a collective sigh of relief. Yes, that's what it feels like. As if Hollywood finally gave us a visual representation of what physicists had been whispering about for decades. And by the way, if you enjoy diving into these incredible ideas as much as I enjoy telling them, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support is very important. Let us know in the comments from what city and time zone you're watching our lectures. We'd love to find out. Now, let's get back to the matter at hand, or rather, to our infinite universes and Dr. Strange. You know what's coolest? What we see on screen, like Dr. Strange flying through different dimensions, or Spider-Man meeting his versions from other worlds, isn't just a whim of screenwriters. It's almost a visualization of genuinely serious scientific hypotheses. A skeptic might say, well, it's just Marvel's way of rebooting old heroes. And they'd be partly right, of course. But Hollywood, like a talented translator from the language of formulas to the language of images, has taken very complex concepts and made them understandable, even tangible, for millions. Seems like fantasy, right? Where's the connection between cinema and real physics? But you know what's most amazing? While screenwriters were coming up with another dizzying dimensional hopping plot arc, scientists had long been juggling far crazier ideas. Imagine Hollywood is a gigantic culinary chef who takes the most exotic ingredients from the scientific kitchen and transforms them into dishes for the general public. And one such ingredient, unexpectedly, became string theory. Remember, at the beginning, we talked about how reality might be far more complex than it seems? Well, string theory and its more advanced sibling, M theory, don't just hint at the existence of parallel worlds. They predict them. Just like your GPS predicts traffic jams. This theory posits that all elementary particles, from which our world is made, are not points, but tiny vibrating strings. And this is where it gets most interesting. For this mathematical model to work, it requires far more dimensions than our usual 3 spatial and 1 temporal. Imagine it's like a huge chest of drawers. You only see 3 drawers, but in reality, there could be 10, 20, or even an infinite number. These extra dimensions, according to string theory, can be curled up into incredibly small, microscopic sizes, or conversely, be enormous. And how these dimensions are curled, their shape, their size, determines the fundamental laws of physics in that specific universe. So one form of curled-up dimensions is our universe, with our gravity, electromagnetism, and so on. And another form is a different universe, where gravity might be stronger, the speed of light different, and Schrödinger's cats perhaps aren't worried at all about their dual nature. So, no proof, you might ask. Not yet, my dear friend. String theory is, for now, precisely a theory. Elegant and mathematically beautiful, but not yet amenable to direct experimental verification. We can't just peek into a neighboring universe like Dr. Strange. But you know what it offers? It provides us with a captivating, elegant answer to the question, why are the laws of our universe exactly as they are? Perhaps because they could be different, and somewhere else they are different, and we simply happened to find ourselves in this particular valley. It's like drawing one card from an infinite deck, and it turns out to be an ace. That doesn't mean there aren't other cards. It means you're holding an ace. And somewhere, another you drew an 8, or a joker, and lives in a world with different rules. Sounds crazy, right? But within that madness lies a captivating logic. On April 12, 1961, at the Baikonur Cosmodrome, Yuri Gagarin's voice echoed across the entire planet with his legendary Poekali. Let's go. He was confined in the cramped capsule of Vostok 1, preparing for a journey no one had undertaken before him. The sky, which had been humanity's boundary, suddenly became a threshold. 12 atmospheres of pressure, violent shaking, the roar of thousands of tons of fuel blasting from the nozzles. His heartbeat was off the charts. Gagarin didn't know if he would survive. No one knew. He could have burned up in the atmosphere, suffocated in the vacuum, or simply been lost forever in the infinite black abyss. But he took the risk. And that risk changed the world. While we contemplate such profound matters, I want to remind you, if you're enjoying our journey along the boundaries of reality, don't forget to hit the like button on this video and subscribe to the channel. For us, it's the best motivation to continue these wild conversations. And by the way, I'm always curious. From what city and time zone are you watching our lectures? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to find out. But let's return to our cosmic risk. Gagarin took the risk. But what if he, or any of us, knew that losing was impossible? Imagine that. Quantum immortality, as we've discussed, doesn't mean you're invulnerable. It means your consciousness always jumps to the branch of reality where you survived. Listen, you know what's most surprising? Our fear of death is, essentially, one of life's most powerful drivers. It's what makes us cautious, think about consequences, and plan for the future. What if that driver simply turns off? If death isn't the end for you? Imagine, for example, you decide to change jobs. Normally, you weigh all the pros and cons. What if it doesn't work out? What if I'm left without money? What if I fail? That's fear. The fear of the death of an old life, the fear of uncertainty. But what if you knew that in some universe, you would definitely succeed? And in another, well, there you failed. But that's no longer you. In your personal, subjective reality, everything will always turn out well. Every time your life hangs by a thread, you always end up on the side where the thread didn't break. It's like having an infinite, perfect parachute that always opens, no matter how high you jump. Or an insurance policy that covers absolutely everything, even your most reckless actions. You know, skeptical physicists hearing something like this would surely exclaim, "What nonsense! That's a recipe for total chaos. People will stop being responsible." And indeed, if you always win life's lottery, what would stop you from, say, jumping off a cliff without a bungee, just because you can? Well, you wouldn't die. Someone else would. In a parallel universe, it's not just the possibility of survival. It's the possibility of living every possibility. Wanted to be a rock star? Wanted to be a monk? Wanted to sail around the world on a yacht? In each of these realities, there's a you. And in the reality where you're listening to this lecture, you're still alive and interested in it. On the one hand, this grants incredible freedom. Freedom from the fear of failure, from the fear of loss, from the fear of the ultimate loss, life itself. It could be a true catalyst for creativity, for experimentation, for boundless knowledge. You could try everything you've ever wanted, knowing that the worst outcome won't befall you. But there's another side, isn't there? What about love? What about loved ones, if you're immortal and they're not? What's it like to continue existing, knowing that in countless realities they've left you? Or even worse, that in this reality they're not so lucky in their quantum game? It makes you wonder, is the absence of the fear of death true freedom? Or is it just shifting responsibility onto countless versions of yourself in other universes? We want to be fearless, but sometimes it's precisely fear that gives victory its savor, or life itself its savor. Quantum immortality, if true, doesn't just change our relationship with death. It turns the very concept of how we should live upside down. Because perhaps we're already living this way. We just don't realize it. We've met the multiverse, where every decision you make gives birth to a new reality, like a droplet falling into water and creating endless ripples. And finally, we've arrived at the most insane idea: quantum immortality. The idea that your death is simply not your death, but the death of some other, less fortunate you in one of the countless branches of reality. It would seem here it is, the Holy Grail, the answer to a 1,000-year-old fear, eternal life, a cosmic get-out-of-jail-free card. But wait, is this truly the answer? Or just a new, even more grandiose riddle wrapped in a pretty scientific wrapper? Imagine you found a lost button, but sewed it onto someone else's coat. It's a solution of sorts, but not for you. Take consciousness, for example. We said that you always end up in the reality where you continue to live. But what you is that? If every moment of your choice generates millions of your copies in other universes, each living its own unique life, then which of them is the real you? Is your brain, your consciousness, some cosmic router that constantly reconnects to the most alive version of yourself? Philosophers, faced with such a question, would frantically reach for their sedatives. Physicists are like, hey, we're just describing processes. And philosophers retort, and what did you do with the soul, you clever people? And that's just the beginning. If immortality means endless existence in increasingly terrible or boring realities, is it a gift or a curse? What if one day you find yourself trapped in a reality where you're simply a vegetable, or where every day is an endless, repeating nightmare? Because in some of the millions of branches, you still continue to exist. Sounds creepy, right? It's like riding an infinite train that always reaches a dead end, but you just keep riding. And what about your loved ones? They aren't necessarily lucky, according to the quantum scenario. If you're always going to exist, but lose those you love in infinite branches of reality, that sounds more like purgatory than paradise. It's like having an infinite life, but every day you're shown movies of all your friends and relatives vanishing into dust. A skeptic might say, this is all just wordplay, a convenient fairy tale for those who fear the end. Perhaps. Quantum immortality, in essence, is an interpretation, not a fact. It's a bold, provocative reading of one of the strangest ideas in the history of science, the multiverse theory. And like any good story, it raises more questions than it provides answers. We've only just pulled back the curtain. What lies beyond it? Is it merely an infinite, tangled labyrinth of mirrored reflections of ourselves? Or perhaps it's the key to understanding something far greater, something we can't even imagine yet? It's just a theory, of course. But isn't it amazing that our science has reached such frontiers, where the very idea of death becomes merely an option? It's like dropping a massive stone into a bottomless shaft. We hear the echo, but we never see the bottom. We've finished our journey, but not our contemplation. Quantum immortality isn't a final destination. It's merely another branching point on the road to truth. And it, like all great mysteries, leaves us in awe, facing the infinity and incomprehensibility of our own existence. So, is quantum immortality an answer or a new riddle? I think both. And in that lies its incredible, dizzying beauty.